Ji-won opened his eyes slowly. His head hurt badly and everything looked blurry. The last thing he remembered was flying his scout ship near the border of human space. There had been a bright flash and then nothing. Now he was lying on a cold metal floor. Strange blue lights glowed on the walls around him. The air smelled different here. It had a sharp chemical smell that made his nose burn. When he tried to move his hands, he found they were locked together with some kind of energy cuffs that glowed red. "The human is awake," said a voice from somewhere above him. Ji-won looked up and saw 3 alien creatures standing around him. They were tall and thin with gray skin that looked like leather. Their eyes were large and black without any white parts. Sharp teeth showed when they spoke. These were Valkyrie warriors. Ji-won had seen pictures of them in military briefings but never met one in person. The tallest one stepped forward. He wore a dark uniform with silver marks that showed he was important. "I am Commander Thexval of the Valkyrie Empire," he said in perfect English. "You are now our prisoner." Ji-won tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. "What do you want with me?" he asked. Commander Thexval made a sound like laughing, but it was not a happy sound. "We found your little spy ship trying to watch our fleet movements. Very stupid of your people to send such a weak scout so close to our territory." "I was not spying," Ji-won said. "I was on a routine patrol mission." "Lies," said another Valkyrie. This one had scars on his face and arms. "All humans are liars and cowards. Look how small and soft this one is. No claws, no fangs, no natural weapons at all. How did such weak creatures ever learn to fly between stars?" The third alien was female. Her voice was higher than the others, but just as cold. "Perhaps they stole the technology from a better species," she said. "Humans are known for taking things that do not belong to them." Commander Thexval walked around Ji-won like a predator studying its prey. "What should we do with this spy? We could question him, but I doubt he knows anything useful. His brain is probably too simple to understand real military secrets." The scarred Valkyrie grinned, showing all his sharp teeth. "We could sell him to the slave markets on Gorvek's station. Some collectors pay good money for rare creatures." "No," said the female. "That would be too easy. This human needs to learn what happens when his kind trespasses in Valkyrie space." Ji-won felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about what happened to humans who were captured by the Valkyrie Empire. Most were never seen again. Commander Thexval stopped walking and looked directly at Ji-won. "I have a better idea. We are heading to Zerion Prime for the Grand Tournament. The Drake Pits will be hosting special events for all the noble families of the Empire." The other 2 Valkyrie looked excited when they heard this. The female clapped her hands together. "Perfect. It has been too long since we had fresh entertainment in the arena." "What are the Drake Pits?" Ji-won asked, even though he was afraid of the answer. The scarred Valkyrie laughed. "Only the most famous gladiator arena in this part of the galaxy. Prisoners fight against the deadliest creatures we can find. The crowds love watching weak beings get torn apart by monsters. The drakes are especially fun to watch," added the female. "They are huge predators from the volcanic worlds. Each one is as big as your human vehicles and twice as mean. They have never been tamed by any species. Even our best warriors fear them," Commander Thexval nodded. "These creatures hunt in packs and show no mercy. Their claws can cut through steel and their breath can melt stone. In all the years the arena has been running, no prisoner has ever survived more than a few minutes against them." Ji-won tried to stay calm, but his heart was beating fast. "You cannot do this. There are laws about treating prisoners." "Human laws mean nothing here," Commander Thexval said. "You are in Valkyrie space now. We make the rules and we decide who lives or dies." The ship shook slightly as it changed course. Through a small window, Ji-won could see stars moving past. They were traveling very fast toward whatever horrible fate waited for him. "How long until we reach Zerion Prime?" asked the female. 3 days, replied Commander Thexval. "Enough time to let the human think about what is coming. Fear makes the show more entertaining for the crowds." The scarred Valkyrie started making bets with the others about how long Ji-won would last in the arena. "I say less than 30 seconds once the drakes catch his scent." 20 seconds, said the female. "Humans are even weaker than they look." Commander Thexval considered this. "I think you are both wrong. This one might surprise us. He seems calmer than most prisoners. Perhaps he will run around screaming for a whole minute before the drakes catch him." They all laughed at this idea. To them, Ji-won was just a source of amusement. His life meant nothing more than entertainment value. Over the next 3 days, Ji-won was kept in a small cell with barely enough room to lie down. They gave him water and some kind of gray food paste that tasted terrible but kept him alive. He used the time to think and plan. Jiwan had been a soldier for 8 years before becoming a scout pilot. He had trained in survival skills and alien creature behavior. He knew that panic would get him killed faster than any monster could. If he was going to face these drakes, he needed to study everything he could about them. When the guards were not watching, he listened to their conversations. He learned that drakes were pack hunters who used teamwork to bring down large prey. They were smart enough to set traps and coordinate attacks. Most importantly, they had never been successfully tamed because no one had ever tried to understand them instead of just fighting them. The ship finally arrived at Zerion Prime. Through his cell window, Jiwan could see a dark world covered with volcanoes and rivers of lava. Huge black towers rose from the surface like giant spears pointed at the sky. "Time to go, human," said Commander Thexval as he opened the cell door. "Your audience awaits." As they led him toward the transport shuttle, Jiwan made himself a promise. He would not die screaming for the entertainment of these cruel aliens. Whatever happened in that arena, he would face it with dignity and courage. The shuttle carried him down to the surface where the greatest challenge of his life was waiting. The arena was bigger than anything Jiwan had ever seen. Thousands of alien creatures filled the seats that went up so high they disappeared into darkness. The noise was incredible. Beings from dozens of different worlds were all shouting and cheering for blood. Jiwan stood on a metal platform that hung over the arena floor. Far below him, he could see a maze of black rock formations and deep caves. Steam rose from cracks in the ground where lava flowed underneath. This was the perfect hunting ground for creatures that lived in volcanic worlds. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced a voice that echoed through the arena, "today we have special entertainment. A human prisoner will face the legendary drakes of Zerion Prime." The crowd roared with excitement. Jiwan could see aliens pointing at him and making gestures he did not understand. Some were already placing bets on how quickly he would die. Commander Thexval stood in a luxury box high above the arena. He spoke into a communication device. "Lower the human into the pit. Let the games begin." The platform started moving down slowly. Jiwan used this time to study the arena floor. He saw several cave openings where the drakes would come from. The rocks were sharp and would be dangerous to run on. There were a few places where he could take cover, but nowhere to really hide. As the platform got lower, Jiwan could feel the heat from the volcanic activity below. The air was thick and hard to breathe. His military training kicked in and he began to plan. Running would be useless against creatures that were faster than him. Fighting was impossible since he had no weapons. He would have to try something else. The platform touched the ground and immediately flew back up, leaving Jiwan alone in the arena. The crowd got quiet as everyone waited to see what would happen next. A deep growling sound came from one of the caves. Then another growl answered from a different direction. Jiwan counted at least 3 separate voices. The drakes were talking to each other, coordinating their attack. The first drake emerged from the largest cave opening. Jiwan had never seen anything so terrifying. The creature was as big as a truck with scales that looked like black armor. Its claws were as long as swords and its teeth were sharp enough to cut through steel. Yellow eyes stared at him with pure hunger. A second drake came out from his left side. This one was smaller but moved faster. Scars covered its body, showing it was an experienced fighter. It circled around trying to get behind Jiwan. The third drake was the largest of all. It had only one good eye and walked with a slight limp. But Jiwan could tell it was the leader of the pack. The other 2 waited for its signal before attacking. Instead of running or trying to find a weapon, Jiwan did something that surprised everyone in the arena. He sat down on the ground and made himself as small as possible. Then he began to speak in a low, calm voice. "Easy there, big guys," he said softly. "I am not here to hurt you. I know you are just doing what they trained you to do." The drakes stopped moving and tilted their heads. They had never heard a prey animal talk to them before. Usually prisoners just screamed and ran in circles until they were caught. Jiwan had studied animal behavior during his military training. He knew that most predators were more interested in creatures that ran away. Something that stayed still and calm was confusing to them. The lead drake took a step closer. Its massive head was now only a few feet from Jiwan. Hot breath that smelled like sulfur washed over him. One bite from those jaws would cut him in half. "I can see you are hungry," Jiwan continued talking. "But I also see something else. You are tired, aren't you? Tired of fighting in this place. Tired of being caged and forced to kill for entertainment. The crowd was getting restless. They had come to see action, not a conversation. Some aliens started shouting for the drakes to attack, but something strange was happening. The more Jiwon talked, the calmer the drakes became. The second drake stopped circling and sat down like a giant dog. The third drake moved closer, but not in a threatening way. Jiwon noticed things that the crowd could not see from their seats high above. The drakes were thin under their thick scales. Their eyes showed signs of stress and exhaustion. These were not wild hunters. They were prisoners just like him. The lead drake stretched its neck forward until its nose almost touched Jiwon's hand. Very slowly, Jiwon extended his fingers. The drake sniffed carefully, taking in his scent. "That's right," Jiwon whispered. "I am not your enemy. We are both trapped in this place by creatures who think they are better than us." The arena fell completely silent. No one could believe what they were seeing. A human was making friends with the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Commander Thexval stood up in his box. "What is happening down there? Why are the drakes not attacking?" His weapons officer, a female named Quindar, was watching through electronic scopes. "Sir, the human appears to be communicating with them. The drakes are showing behaviors I have never seen before." "That is impossible," Commander Thexval snapped. "Drakes cannot be tamed. They are killing machines, nothing more." But down in the arena, Jiwon was proving him wrong. The lead drake had allowed him to touch its nose. The scales felt warm and surprisingly smooth. Jiwon could feel the creature's heartbeat through its skin. "You are not monsters," he said quietly. "You are just animals trying to survive in a bad situation. Just like me." The second drake moved closer and lay down near Jiwon's feet. The third drake, despite its injuries, came over and settled on his other side. Within minutes, Jiwon was surrounded by 3 massive predators who were treating him like a member of their pack. The crowd did not know how to react. Some were angry that their entertainment was ruined. Others were fascinated by this impossible scene. Never before had anyone seen drakes behave peacefully toward another species. Arena Master Vex Torin, who ran the games, was furious. He activated the arena's control systems, sending electric shocks through the floor to make the drakes more aggressive. But instead of attacking Jiwon, the drakes moved to protect him. They positioned their bodies to shield him from the worst of the electrical current. When the shocks hit them, they growled in pain but did not move away from their new human friend. Jiwon felt the electricity coursing through the ground and up into his body. It hurt terribly, but he gritted his teeth and did not cry out. He would not give the cruel aliens the satisfaction of hearing him scream. The lead drake saw Jiwon's pain and did something that shocked everyone. It roared in anger at the arena controllers. Not the hunting roar of a predator, but the protective roar of a creature defending its family. As the electric shocks finally stopped, Jiwon found himself lying against the warm side of the massive drake. The creature's breathing was deep and steady. For the first time since his capture, Jiwon felt safe. The impossible had happened. The human had tamed the untamable drakes of Zerion Prime. Night came to the arena as the artificial lights dimmed to copy the natural day and night cycle. Most of the crowd had left, confused and disappointed by the lack of violence they had expected to see. But some aliens remained, fascinated by the strange bond between the human and the drakes. Jiwon had spent hours learning about his new companions. The lead drake, which he decided to call Talon, because of its impressive claws, was clearly the oldest and most experienced. The second drake was younger and more curious about everything around it. The third drake moved carefully because of old injuries that had never healed properly. As darkness fell, Jiwon noticed that the drakes became more active. Their eyes glowed softly in the dark, helping them see in conditions where humans would be blind. They moved around the arena checking for dangers and marking their territory. Talon came back to where Jiwon was sitting and lay down beside him. The warmth from the drake's body felt good in the cool night air. Jiwon could hear the creature's heartbeat, slow and steady like a giant drum. "You have been in this place for a long time, haven't you?" Jiwon said softly. "I can see it in your eyes. You remember what it was like to be free?" The drake made a low sound that was almost like singing. Jiwon had never heard anything like it before. It was sad and beautiful at the same time. The younger drake approached, carrying something in its mouth. It dropped the object near Jiwon's feet and backed away. When Jiwon looked closer, he saw it was a piece of metal that had fallen from the arena equipment above. The edges were sharp enough to cut. "Thank you," Ji-won said, picking up the metal carefully. You are trying to help me, aren't you? But Ji-won did not want to use the metal as a weapon. Instead, he examined the injured drake more closely. In the dim light, he could see deep cuts on its back legs that had become infected. The wounds were causing the drake pain every time it moved. Ji-won tore strips of cloth from his uniform and used his water ration to clean the drake's injuries as best he could. The creature stood very still while he worked, understanding that Ji-won was trying to help. When he finished, the injured drake touched Ji-won's shoulder gently with its massive head. It was a gesture of gratitude that needed no words to understand. Commander Thexaval was still watching from his private box high above the arena. He had ordered his crew to record everything that happened. Never before had anyone seen drakes behave this way. Sir, said Quindar, the human is treating the drake's wounds. Our medical scanners show that his methods are actually helping heal the infections. Impossible, Commander Thexaval muttered. How can such a primitive creature understand drake biology better than our scientists? The truth was that Ji-won did not understand drake biology at all, but he understood pain and suffering. He knew what it looked like when a living being was hurt and needed help. And he knew that kindness was a universal language that every creature could understand. As the night went on, more drakes appeared at the edges of the arena. Ji-won counted at least 6 more pairs of glowing eyes watching from the cave openings. These were drakes that had been kept in separate cages, brought out to fight only when the arena needed them. The 3 drakes with Ji-won began making soft, calling sounds toward the caves. They were talking to the other drakes in their own language. Slowly, carefully, the hidden drakes began to emerge. Soon Ji-won was surrounded by 9 massive predators, but he felt no fear. These creatures had accepted him as part of their group. They brought him bits of food they had hidden in their caves. They shared their water from underground springs. They treated him like family. The arena maintenance robots arrived just before dawn to prepare for the next day's events. These machines were programmed to clean the arena floor and repair any damage from the previous day's fights. But when the robots entered the arena, something unexpected happened. The drakes saw them as a threat to their new human friend. All 9 creatures moved into defensive positions around Ji-won. One robot approached too close and reached out with a mechanical arm to grab Ji-won. Talon reacted instantly. Swatting the machine with his massive claw, the robot flew across the arena and crashed into the wall, completely destroyed. More robots came, armed with electric prods and tranquilizer weapons. They were programmed to control the drakes when necessary. But they had never faced drakes that were working together to protect someone. When one robot shocked the injured drake that Ji-won had helped during the night, something inside Ji-won snapped. He had been patient and calm up to this point, but seeing his friend hurt by these machines made him angry. No, he shouted, jumping between the robot and the drake. The electric shock hit Ji-won instead, sending pain through his entire body. He cried out and fell to the ground. The sound of Ji-won's pain triggered something primal in all the drakes. They had been trained to fight each other and to kill prisoners for entertainment, but they had never been taught to protect someone who had shown them kindness. The drakes attacked the robots with fury unlike anything the arena controllers had ever seen. These were not the controlled, predictable fights they were used to. This was a coordinated assault by creatures defending their territory and their friend. In less than 5 minutes, all the maintenance robots were destroyed. The drakes had worked together using tactics that impressed even the military observers in the crowd. They had flanked the robots, used teamwork to overwhelm them, and shown intelligence that no one thought they possessed. Arena Master Vextorin watched from his control room as his expensive robots were torn apart. This is unacceptable, he raged. The human has corrupted our perfect killing machines. He must be removed immediately. But Commander Thexaval had other ideas. As a military leader, he recognized tactical brilliance when he saw it. The human had somehow turned 9 individual predators into a coordinated fighting unit in less than 24 hours. Wait, he said to Vextorin. Do not interfere yet. I want to see what else this human can do. Down in the arena, Ji-won was helping the injured drake whose wounds had been reopened by the robot's shock. The other drakes formed a protective circle around them, their eyes scanning for any new threats. Ji-won realized that everything had changed. He was no longer a prisoner waiting to die for entertainment. He had become the leader of the most dangerous pack of predators in the galaxy. And somehow he knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger than anyone could imagine. Arena Master Vextorn was furious about losing his expensive maintenance robots. He paced around his control room like a caged animal, his forearms waving angrily as he shouted at his staff. "That human has ruined everything," he screamed. "My drakes were perfect killing machines. Now they act like pets defending their owner. This cannot be allowed to continue." His assistant, a nervous creature with large eyes, cowered behind a control panel. "What should we do, Master Vexitorin?" "We use the Alpha," Vextorin said with an evil smile. "Release the Alpha Drake immediately." Everyone in the control room went silent. Even the assistant stopped shaking and stared at his master in shock. "Sir," the assistant whispered, "the Alpha has not been released for 2 years. It killed the last 5 opponents in less than 30 seconds each. Are you certain this is wise?" "The Alpha will remind those other drakes what they were created for," Vextorin replied. "And it will destroy that troublesome human once and for all." Down in the arena, Jiwan was teaching the drakes how to work together more effectively. He had noticed that they were naturally good at teamwork, but they had been kept apart for so long that they had forgotten how to communicate properly with each other. Using hand signals and simple words, Jiwan showed them how to coordinate their movements. He taught them military formation techniques that would help them protect each other in a fight. The drakes were quick learners and seemed to enjoy working as a team. Talon was especially good at understanding what Jiwan wanted. The big drake could follow complex instructions and then teach the other drakes what to do. It was like having a sergeant helping to train new soldiers. The crowd had grown larger during the day. Word was spreading across the galaxy about the human who had tamed the untamable drakes. Aliens were traveling from distant worlds to see this impossible sight for themselves. Some came to laugh at what they thought was a trick. Others came because they were genuinely curious about this new development. A few came because they had their own prisoners and wanted to learn if humans really had some special ability with dangerous creatures. Commander Thexaval was recording everything for his government. The Velkari military was very interested in anything that could help them control their enemies. If humans really could tame wild beasts, that information would be extremely valuable. But Jiwan was not trying to control the drakes. He was trying to help them remember what it felt like to be free. Every time he looked at these magnificent creatures, he felt sad about what had been done to them. "You were not born to fight in cages," he told them during a quiet moment. "You were born to fly between the stars and hunt on worlds covered with forests and oceans. Someone stole that life from you, but maybe we can find a way to get it back." The drakes listened to every word even though they could not understand human language completely. They understood the tone of his voice and the emotions behind his words. They could tell that this strange small creature genuinely cared about their well-being. A deep rumbling sound echoed through the arena. It was different from any noise the drakes had made before. All 9 creatures immediately became alert, their heads turning toward the largest cave opening. "What is that?" Jiwan asked. Talon made a low, growling sound that seemed worried. The other drakes moved closer together, forming a protective formation around Jiwan. Whatever was coming, they were afraid of it. The rumbling got louder and the ground began to shake. Pieces of rock fell from the arena walls as something massive moved through the tunnels beneath the floor. Then Jiwan saw it. The Alpha Drake was twice as big as any of the others. Its scales were scarred and pitted from countless fights. One of its eyes was completely white and blind. Electronic control devices had been surgically implanted along its spine, winking with red lights. But what shocked Jiwan the most was the creature's obvious pain. The Alpha moved awkwardly because of infected wounds that had never been treated. Its breathing was labored and harsh. This was not a proud predator. This was a tortured animal driven mad by years of abuse. The Alpha roared, and the sound was filled with rage and suffering. It charged toward Jiwan and the other drakes, its massive claws tearing gouges in the stone floor. Jiwan's 9 drakes moved to intercept the Alpha, but they were no match for its size and fury. The first 2 drakes were knocked aside like toys. The Alpha was heading straight for Jiwan. Instead of running, Jiwan did something that surprised everyone in the arena. He stepped forward with his arms spread wide and began to sing. It was an old Korean lullaby his grandmother Soo-young had sung to him when he was afraid during thunderstorms. The melody was simple and gentle, completely different from any sound that had ever been heard in the violent arena. The Alpha stopped its charge mid-step. Its blind eye and its good eye both focused on the small human who was making these strange, beautiful sounds. Music did not exist on the worlds where drakes came from. They had never heard anything like a lullaby before. But the emotion behind Jiwon's singing reached something deep inside the Alpha's tortured mind. For the first time in years, the Alpha experienced something other than pain and rage. The song reminded it of feelings it had forgotten: comfort, safety, peace. Jiwon kept singing as he walked slowly toward the massive creature. He could see the electronic control devices embedded in its flesh, causing constant agony. He could see the infected wounds and the scars from countless forced battles. "You poor thing," Jiwon whispered between verses of the lullaby. "They have hurt you so badly. But you do not have to be in pain anymore." The Alpha lowered its head until it was level with Jiwon. Tears were flowing from its good eye, something that shocked the alien observers who had never seen a drake cry before. Very gently, Jiwon reached out and touched the Alpha's scarred face. The creature's skin was hot with fever from its infections, but it leaned into Jiwon's touch like a giant cat seeking comfort. The other 9 drakes surrounded them, no longer afraid. They could sense that the Alpha was not their enemy. It was just another victim of the cruel system that had trapped them all. Commander Thexval stood up in his viewing box. His medical scanners were showing readings he had never seen before. "The Alpha Drake's brain chemistry is changing," he told his crew. "The human song is somehow affecting its neurological patterns." Quindar was monitoring the emotional sensors. "Sir, all 10 drakes are showing signs of what we would call bonding behavior. They are forming a family unit with the human as their central figure." "This is unprecedented," Commander Thexval said quietly. "In all our studies of human prisoners, we never detected abilities like this." Down in the arena, Jiwon was examining the Alpha's wounds more closely. The control devices were causing most of the pain. They had been designed to shock the creature whenever it did not fight aggressively enough. "Can you understand me, big friend?" Jiwon asked softly. "I want to help you, but I need you to stay very still while I work." The Alpha seemed to nod its massive head. It lay down on the arena floor and closed its eyes, trusting this small human completely. Using the sharp piece of metal the younger drake had given him earlier, Jiwon carefully began removing the control devices. It was dangerous work. One wrong move could seriously injure the Alpha or cause the devices to explode. But Jiwon had trained as a combat medic before becoming a pilot. He knew how to work under pressure and how to remove foreign objects from wounds safely. One by one, the control devices came free. Each time Jiwon removed one, the Alpha's breathing became easier and its pain decreased. The other drakes watched in fascination as their new human friend performed what seemed like magic. When the last device was removed, the Alpha opened its good eye and looked at Jiwon with an expression of pure gratitude. For the first time in its life, it was completely free from artificial pain. Arena Master Vexatoran was screaming in his control room. "This is impossible. The human is destroying years of conditioning and training. Stop him immediately." But Commander Thexval held up his hand. "No, let him finish. I want to see what happens when the Alpha is fully healed." As night fell over the arena, Jiwon found himself surrounded by 10 massive drakes who had chosen him as their leader. They were no longer the broken, tortured creatures they had been that morning. They were a family. By the 3rd day, Jiwon had learned more about drake communication than any scientist in the galaxy. The creatures had a complex system of growls, body movements, and even scent markers that let them share detailed information with each other. Talon had become his translator, helping Jiwon understand what the other drakes were trying to tell him. The Alpha, who Jiwon had started calling Sci-Fi because of the way its scales gleamed in the light, was the most intelligent of all. Without the constant pain from the control devices, its mind was sharp and focused. "You are not just predators," Jiwon said to them during their morning gathering. "You are thinking, feeling beings with your own culture and history. The people who run this place never bothered to learn that about you." The drakes had been sharing their memories with him through a combination of sounds and images they scratched into the dirt. Jiwon was horrified to learn how they had been captured as babies and trained through torture to fight for entertainment. None of them remembered their original homes or families. They had been prisoners for so long that they had almost forgotten what freedom felt like. But Jiwon's kindness was helping them remember. Arena Master Vexatoran was getting desperate. The crowds were no longer interested in traditional gladiator fights. They wanted to see more of the amazing bond between the human and the drakes, but this was not the violent entertainment that made him rich and famous. Release the chemical agents, he ordered his technicians. Force the drakes to become aggressive again. Sir? His assistant replied nervously. The chemical agents have never been tested on drakes that are in this emotional state. We do not know what might happen. I do not care, Vextorin snapped. Just do it. Green gas began flowing from vents hidden in the arena walls. This poison was designed to make the drakes angry and violent by affecting their brain chemistry. Usually it worked within minutes to turn them into mindless killing machines, but something was different this time. The drakes smelled the poison immediately and moved to protect Jiwon. They used their large bodies to block the gas from reaching him while they searched for them. Sci-Fi found one of the hidden vents and tore it from the wall with his massive claws. The other drakes quickly located and destroyed the remaining vents, stopping the flow of poison gas. Jiwon watched in amazement as his friends worked together to solve this problem. They were not just following instincts anymore. They were thinking, planning, and making decisions as a team. That is it, he said quietly to himself. You are not animals at all. You are people, different from humans, but people just the same. This realization changed everything for Jiwon. He was not a prisoner being forced to fight alongside wild beasts. He was a soldier who had found allies in an enemy prison, and soldiers had a duty to escape and fight back against their captors. Jiwon began studying the arena's structure more carefully. His military engineering training helped him identify weak points in the walls and security systems. The drakes, with their superior strength and senses, could reach places he could not and detect things he would miss. Together, they mapped out the entire complex. The arena was built into a natural volcanic formation, with tunnels and chambers extending deep underground. Most of these areas were used for storage or housing other captive creatures. There are more prisoners here, Jiwon told the drakes after they reported what they had found in the lower tunnels. Other species being held for fights or experiments. If we are going to escape, we should help them too. The drakes agreed immediately. They had suffered in this place and did not want other creatures to experience the same pain. That night, while most of the arena staff was sleeping, Jiwon and the drakes began their operation. Moving silently through the tunnels, they located the holding cells where dozens of other creatures were imprisoned. There were flying creatures from gas giant worlds, kept in tiny cages that prevented them from spreading their wings. There were intelligent plant beings from forest worlds, slowly dying in the artificial environment. There were even some other predatory species that had been broken by years of forced fighting. One by one, Jiwon and the drakes freed them all. But instead of chaos, something beautiful happened. The freed creatures began working together, helping each other escape and sharing resources. The flying creatures carried messages between different groups. The plant beings used their knowledge of chemistry to neutralize more poison gas systems. The other predators used their various abilities to disable security equipment. Jiwon realized that he had accidentally started a revolution. All these different species who had been enemies in the arena were now cooperating to fight their common oppressors. Commander Thexval was awakened by emergency alarms throughout his ship. What is happening? He demanded. Sir, Quindar reported, there is a massive prison break in progress at the arena complex. The human appears to be leading a coordinated escape attempt involving multiple species. Commander Thexval rushed to his viewing monitors and could not believe what he saw. The arena floor was filled with dozens of freed creatures working together like a well-trained military unit. At the center of it all was the small human who had somehow united them all. This is impossible, he whispered. How can one primitive human organize such a complex operation? The truth was that Jiwon was not organizing anything. He had simply shown kindness to creatures that had been treated cruelly for so long that they had forgotten what compassion looked like. Once reminded, they chose to work together naturally. The escaped creatures were not destroying everything randomly. They were surgically dismantling the systems that had been used to torture them. They removed control devices, destroyed poison gas equipment, and freed even more prisoners from hidden cells. Arena Master Vex Torin arrived at his control room to find half his staff had already fled in panic. The remaining technicians were struggling to contain a situation that was growing beyond their ability to handle. Deploy the military security forces, he screamed. Kill them all if necessary. But when the armed guards entered the arena, they found themselves facing something they had never trained for. This was not a riot or a mindless rampage. This was a tactical operation led by creatures who had learned to work as a team. The drakes used their size and strength to disable weapons and vehicles. The flying creatures provided reconnaissance and communication. The plant beings created barriers and obstacles. The other species contributed their own unique abilities to the group effort. And in the middle of it all was Jiwon, not giving orders but simply being the kind of leader who inspired others to be their best selves. The security forces were overwhelmed within hours. Many of them surrendered rather than continue fighting against creatures who could have killed them, but chose to show mercy instead. By dawn, the escaped prisoners controlled the entire arena complex, but instead of revenge, they focused on helping other captives and documenting the evidence of cruelty they had discovered. Jiwon stood on the arena floor surrounded by dozens of freed creatures from across the galaxy. He had started as a lone prisoner waiting to die for entertainment. Now he was the center of a movement that was challenging everything the cruel aliens believed about strength, intelligence, and civilization. The revolution had only just begun. The revolution at the arena complex had not gone unnoticed. News of the escape was spreading across the galaxy faster than Jiwon could have imagined. But instead of sending just military forces to stop them, something unexpected was happening. Representatives from dozens of different species were arriving at Zerion Prime. Some came as official government observers. Others came because they had lost family members to the arena games over the years. Many came simply because they had heard impossible stories about a human who could talk to monsters. Jiwon found himself in a position he had never expected. He was no longer just a prisoner or even a rebel leader. He had become a symbol of something much bigger than himself. "We need to be careful," he told Sci-Fi and Talon during one of their planning meetings. Too much attention too fast could be dangerous for everyone. But the attention was already beyond his control. Captain Soman of the Earth Defense Corps had received emergency communications about her missing pilot. She arrived at Zerion Prime with a full diplomatic escort, expecting to negotiate for Jiwon's release. Instead, she found him standing in the center of what had once been the most feared gladiator arena in the galaxy, surrounded by creatures from dozens of worlds who looked to him for guidance and protection. "Jiwon," Captain Soman said when she finally reached him. "What have you done here?" Jiwon smiled at his commanding officer. "I made some friends, Captain, and we helped each other solve a problem." The problem was bigger than Captain Soman had realized. The freed creatures had discovered records showing that the arena system extended across multiple worlds. Thousands of intelligent beings were being held as prisoners for entertainment throughout Velkari space. More importantly, they had found evidence that many supposedly extinct species were actually being kept alive in private collections and secret facilities. Entire cultures that the galaxy thought were lost forever were being preserved as trophies for wealthy collectors. "This is a crime against every civilized principle in the galaxy," Captain Soman said after reviewing the evidence. "But Jiwon, you are just one human. You cannot take on the entire Velkari Empire by yourself." "I am not by myself," Jiwon replied, gesturing toward the diverse group of creatures around them. "And we are not taking on anyone. We are just trying to help people get back to their families." Commander Thexval watched from his ship as more vessels arrived in orbit around Zerion Prime. Military ships from a dozen different species were taking positions around the planet. But they were not all pointing their weapons at the arena complex. Some of them were pointing at his ship. "Sir," Quindar reported, "we are receiving communications from the Galactic Council. They are demanding that we surrender all prisoners immediately and submit to a full investigation of our prison." Systems Commander Thexval realized that his government's secret cruelty was about to become very public. The Velkari Empire had built its reputation on military strength and technological superiority. But now the galaxy was seeing a different side of their civilization. "What are your orders, sir?" Quindar asked quietly. For the first time in his career, Commander Thexval did not have an answer. Everything he had been taught about strength and power was being challenged by a small human who had accomplished more with kindness than the Velkari had achieved with centuries of fear and violence. Down in the arena, Jiwon was working with representatives from multiple species to coordinate the safe return of freed prisoners to their homeworlds. The logistics were complicated, but the cooperation between different cultures was remarkable. The plant beings from Verdania were sharing their knowledge of biology to help heal creatures that had been injured in captivity. The flying people from the gas giant Ethros were using their ships to transport those who needed immediate medical attention. Even former enemies were working together for the common good. Arena Master Vexitorin had been arrested by his own security forces when they realized the extent of his illegal activities. The evidence found in his private files showed years of corruption, illegal captures, and cover-ups that reached the highest levels of several governments. "This is bigger than we thought," Captain Soman told Jiwon as they reviewed the discovered documents. Some of these prisoners were taken from worlds that were supposed to be under galactic protection treaties. Jiwon nodded sadly. Sci-Fi and the other drakes were just babies when they were captured. Their entire species might have been wiped out by the people who took them. We may never be able to find their real home. But Skyfire had been listening to their conversation. The massive drake approached and began making the complex series of sounds that Jiwon had learned to recognize as drake language. Talon joined in, and soon all the drakes were participating in what seemed like a group discussion. "What are they saying?" Captain Soman asked. Jiwon listened carefully, picking up the patterns and emotions behind the drake communication. "They are saying that they do not need to find their old home. They want to stay here and help other prisoners who are still being rescued from different facilities. Here," Captain Soman looked around at the volcanic landscape of Xerion Prime. "This is not exactly a welcoming environment for most species." "That is exactly why it would work," Jiwon explained. "This world is too harsh for most people to want to live here permanently, but it is perfect for creatures that need a safe place to recover from trauma. We could turn this whole complex into a rehabilitation center." The idea was so simple and yet so revolutionary that Captain Soman had to sit down to think about it. Instead of destroying the arena, they could transform it into something positive. Instead of a place where creatures were forced to fight for entertainment, it could become a place where they learned to heal and work together. Over the following weeks, the transformation began. Engineers and volunteers from dozens of worlds arrived to help convert the prison facilities into comfortable living spaces. The torture chambers became medical facilities. The weapons storage areas became libraries and workshops where different species could share their knowledge and skills. The drakes became the guardians of this new sanctuary. Their size and strength made them perfect protectors, but their gentle treatment of smaller creatures showed everyone that true strength came from choosing to help, rather than harm. Jiwon found himself appointed as the first director of interspecies relations for the newly established Xerion Recovery Center. It was not a job he had ever wanted, but it was one he could not refuse. "You realize this changes everything," Captain Soman told him on the day she was scheduled to return to Earth. First contact between humans and the galactic community was supposed to happen through military channels and diplomatic negotiations. Instead, it happened because you made friends with creatures everyone else was afraid of. "Maybe that is better," G1 replied. "Fear and violence just create more fear and violence. But kindness creates kindness." The Velkari government had fallen into chaos as the full extent of their illegal activities became known. Commander Thexaval had been relieved of duty and was facing trial for war crimes. But Quindar had requested transfer to Xerion Prime, wanting to help undo some of the damage her people had caused. "Why?" G1 asked her when she arrived with her resignation from the Velkari military. "Because you showed us that there is a better way to be strong," she replied. "I want to learn how to protect people instead of hurting them." Months later, when galactic historians tried to write about the events at Xerion Prime, they struggled to explain how one human had changed everything. They could document the facts and the timeline, but they could not capture the simple truth that had started it all. Jiwon had seen suffering and chosen to ease it. He had encountered fear and chosen to offer comfort. He had faced hatred and chosen to respond with love. The Drakes understood this perfectly. In their language, they had created a new word that meant the human way of being strong. It was a concept that spread to other species as more creatures learned about the sanctuary on Xerion Prime. Years later, when alien children across the galaxy heard bedtime stories, many of them were about G1 and the Drakes. The stories were different on every world, adapted to local cultures and languages, but they all carried the same message. True strength is not about being feared. True strength is about being trusted. And trust is something that must be earned through kindness, one small act at a time. The Drake's submission had become something else entirely. It was no longer about monsters bowing to a master. It was about friends choosing to stand together. On Zirian Prime, under the light of alien stars, creatures from across the galaxy lived in peace. They had learned that differences in size, shape, and species did not matter as much as similarities in hope, dreams, and the desire to be treated with dignity. Jiwan still sang his grandmother Suyung's lullaby sometimes, when newly rescued creatures arrived at the sanctuary frightened and traumatized. The melody had become famous throughout the galaxy as the song of healing, but the real healing did not come from the music. It came from the simple human understanding that every living being deserved compassion, respect, and the chance to choose their own path in life. The monsters had not submitted to Jiwan. They had recognized him as a friend. And in the end, that made all the difference.